In one of the most closely watched murder cases in the country, the trial of Bryan Kohberger may come down to a series of evidence battles. Some pieces have been ruled in. Others may never be heard by the jury. Tonight, we break down which evidence survived, which was challenged, and how these rulings could shape the verdict. The case recap. On November 13, 2022, four University of Idaho students were brutally killed in their off-campus home in Moscow, Idaho. The victims were young, bright, and deeply loved, remembered by their families and community as caring, ambitious, and full of life. The crime shocked the small college town and quickly became national news. After weeks of investigation, Bryan Kohberger, a graduate student studying criminology, was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. He has pleaded not guilty. The case has drawn intense attention not just because of the horrific crime, but because of the contested evidence at the heart of the prosecution's case. From DNA on a knife sheath, to cell tower data, to surveillance footage of a car, each piece of evidence has been the subject of legal challenges and pre-trial battles. These battles aren't just procedural. They determine what jurors will see, what they won't, and how each side will build its story of guilt or innocence. And in a case of this magnitude, those decisions matter. The evidence landscape. From the beginning, investigators collected a wide array of evidence. But not all evidence is created equal, and not all of it makes it into court. The most discussed piece is the DNA recovered from a knife sheath found at the crime scene. Prosecutors claim it is a near match to Kohberger, a piece of evidence they say ties him directly to the murders. The defense, however, has raised questions about how the DNA was collected, tested, and preserved. Another critical category is cell phone tower data. Investigators say Kohberger's phone was pinging in the area near the victim's home around the time of the killings. They argue it places him close to the scene. The defense counters that cell tower data can be unreliable, sometimes covering large areas, and that such evidence risks misleading jurors. Then there is surveillance footage. Several cameras allegedly captured a white Hyundai Elantra, the same type of car Kohberger drove, near the crime scene. For prosecutors, it adds another layer of circumstantial evidence. For the defense, it's open to interpretation: blurry footage, unclear license plates, and questions about timing. Finally, there are digital records, internet searches, academic writings, and other behavioral evidence. These are often the most contested, because they can easily prejudice jurors without being directly linked to the crime. Each piece has been fought over. Some admitted. Some excluded. Together, they shape the story the jury will ultimately hear. The battles. Let's examine each major evidence battle, one by one. The knife sheath DNA. At the center of the case is the leather knife sheath recovered from one of the victim's beds. Investigators say it contained a single male DNA profile. Prosecutors argue it is a statistical match to Kohberger, with odds of random occurrence astronomically low. Defense attorneys questioned the testing methods, chain of custody, and potential contamination. They argued that the testing involved probabilistic genotyping, software-driven analysis that is still debated in courtrooms. But after hearings and expert testimony, the judge ruled the DNA evidence admissible. This will be one of the prosecution's strongest pieces. The cell tower data. Investigators tracked Kohberger's phone through cell tower records, showing it was near the victim's house multiple times before the killings, and in the area again on the night of the murders. Defense attorneys fought to exclude this evidence, calling it unreliable and misleading. They argued that cell coverage can span miles and does not pinpoint location. The judge allowed the evidence, but with strict limitations. Prosecutors must present it carefully, with expert explanation. The surveillance footage. Several surveillance cameras captured images of a white Hyundai Elantra around the time of the murders. The prosecution says this places Kohberger's vehicle near the crime. The defense argued the footage was grainy, indistinct, and potentially misidentified. The judge allowed the footage, noting that jurors could weigh its reliability themselves. Other contested evidence. Additional evidence included alleged internet searches and prior behavioral data. The defense argued much of this was prejudicial rather than probative. The judge excluded some of it, limiting what prosecutors could show about past behavior. In short, the knife sheath DNA is in. The phone data is in, with limits. The car footage is in. But some of the more speculative material is out. These rulings are not just technical. They determine the shape of the trial. What the jury will hear. The jury will enter the courtroom with no knowledge of the behind-the-scenes legal battles. They will only hear what the judge has admitted. And that evidence will frame their perception of the case. They will hear about the knife sheath DNA. They will be told that it matches Kohberger to astronomical odds. For many jurors, that will carry enormous weight. They will hear about the phone records. They'll learn that his phone connected with towers near the crime scene multiple times, including on the night of the killings. Experts will explain the limitations, but the image will linger, a phone moving near the victim's house. They will see surveillance footage of a white Elantra. It may be grainy, but combined with the other evidence, it strengthens the timeline prosecutors want to present. What they won't hear is just as important. They won't hear speculative internet searches. They won't hear unverified behavioral claims. The judge has drawn a line, keeping out evidence that risks unfair prejudice. What remains is a streamlined narrative for both sides. For prosecutors, it's a story of physical evidence, digital footprints, and surveillance linking Kohberger to the scene. For the defense, it's a story of contested science, unreliable data, and coincidences. Which story resonates will decide the outcome. Stakes and next steps. The rulings on evidence set the stage for trial strategy. For the prosecution, the strategy is clear: hammer the DNA, reinforce it with digital data, and show that every piece, phone, car, surveillance, points in the same direction. They will argue it is a consistent, compelling web of evidence. For the defense, the task is to break that web. They must challenge the DNA, argue the possibility of contamination, question the reliability of probabilistic genotyping. They must explain how cell tower data can mislead, how surveillance footage can be misinterpreted, how even compelling sounding evidence may not be proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The stakes are enormous. If the prosecution succeeds, the jury could see the evidence as overwhelming. If the defense raises enough doubt, they may see it as uncertain. Either way, these evidence battles will define the trial. What is in? What is out? And what story the jury will ultimately believe. Closing. This trial is a reminder that justice isn't only about what happened. It's about what can be proven. Evidence must survive scrutiny. It must meet standards of law and science. And it must be weighed carefully by jurors. Bryan Kohberger maintains his innocence. The victims' families continue to seek answers and justice. And the nation continues to watch. All details in this video were verified against court filings and reputable reporting. Full sources are linked in the description. If you found this breakdown meaningful, subscribe to Silent Veil for verified true crime analysis every Tuesday and Friday. We lift the veil on hidden stories, always with respect, always with truth.